How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. This is very, very surreal.
I bet. I bet. So, as I was just saying, none of us would be talking to each other, would be enjoying this community, would be trying out these new avenues without you. And so, I hope that as much as we get to share your story, we all get to also sort of send you our love and appreciation. And yeah, big cheers.
Thank you very
So,
much. Thumbs up, Andy, isn't it?
thumbs up, Andy. So let's start.
Yeah.
Tell me,
Fire.
tell me about where your creativity started. As a child, were you a creative child?
Yeah, it's one of those really interesting questions that I think a lot of people need to kind of ask themselves. Yes, definitely. Basically, there's some photos of me as a like a 2 or 3 year old um, with paintbrush and like poster paint and throwing it all around on this little easel that my niece now uses. And mum and dad were just constantly getting us to play. Um, they were teachers, so I think when they were outside of school, they realised how important it was to actually kind of have time to play. So just constantly playing games. I know, like even if we went on like trips as a family, my mum would make like a little booklet that was like an I Spy, but with space for us to fill in drawings and things like that. So
Wow.
just constantly playing and making a lot of making lots of things that we're making out of, we had like, I'm sure everyone did, like a modeling box that was full of all of like the leftover boxes and cartons that you had. And it'd be like, why don't we make something out of models today, and we'd make a robot or something. I just, yeah, that was my whole childhood, was just playing with junk and paint.
And how did you find them when you went to school? Because, we've all sort of talked about that often creativity isn't given that much space in school, and I
Yeah.
know that that was your experience. So how how did you just did it become a separate thing for you that, play and creativity is at home and
Yeah, definitely. I think part of the thing is at school, if you're schools are very much like sausage machines, I think, and they create people that fit the society that we have. That's their job. They
Mhm.
create this size person because this size person fits this hole in society. And so if you're slightly off that in any way, then you're made to feel like you're not quite the same as everyone else. And also, the machine isn't built for you, so you're made to feel different the whole time. And one of the things that when I wrote down some of this information, is that I definitely was just felt like a bit of an outsider all the time. I never quite fit in. And if I did excel at something, which I used to excel at creativity, like drawing and all sorts of things like that, um, if it was highlighted in front of a class, I absolutely hated it. It literally made me like shrivel away like a little tortoise. My head would go back inside the shell. I had no interest in whatsoever in showcasing or showing or anything that I'd done. It just wasn't something that I wanted to do or felt comfortable with. And actually, I think that because it's always about achievement in academia, then they think that when you do one good piece of work as an artist or as a creative child, they're like, oh, this is how you should do it. And that's not the case. There isn't
Yeah.
a right or a wrong answer. It's like, yeah, it's good, but also that kid over there who does it slightly differently is awesome as well. So it's sort of, yeah, I think it just doesn't really, to me, it doesn't fit in the education system we have in the UK anyway. I mean, it should be there, but it doesn't fit as a alongside other subjects.
Yeah, there's no genuine, authentic, safe space created for it.
No, exactly. I think like there are teachers out there who are trying to do it and doing it really well. And when I worked in education, my boss was like just the best at it. And I just think that it's really hard for children who are creative, because a lot of the time children who are creative, are like also academic. And if someone is academic and creative, uh, every school will push them to academia, without a doubt, absolutely every time, because they are a box tick. Yes, you're going to get this grade. yes, it's fantastic. We're going to make sure that that person gives us our, I don't know, 95 A to C. So unfortunately, that sort of happens as well. But for me, when I was growing up, it was very much like I did it at home, and I used to hide it, I think, a bit at school. Um, I didn't want people to really know that I was that kind of good at it. So yeah.
Because you felt that it would make you more of a like a target, you know,
Yeah,
or
I remember when I was, I think 11 or 12, being targeted for being like a square or a boffin. There you go, it shows my age. That was the insults back then. And being targeted for being good at something was definitely something that happened in the 90s. You know, there was it's changed now. When I worked in education now, like the children of excellence are really kind of put on a pedestal by the other children. It's quite amazing, actually. But when I was growing up, it was like you were then, as you say, you were there to be almost knocked off that pedestal.
yeah.
And you just never really wanted to be on it. You just literally hide yourself away, do the bare minimum, keep yourself to yourself, and don't really step into the spotlight at all.
Yeah. And so how did that translate into this genuine love you had of creating and play? Did that kill it off, or did it
I
just
think
become a segregated thing?
the segregated thing, and also something that was so much easier, I think, in the time I grew up in, because you went home on a Friday night, and there was no internet, there was no, you know, someone would have to. I joked like this the other day. So someone who wanted to pick on you would have to phone up, and then have to try and get through a conversation with my mum and dad, which is not probably going to be the easiest. And then they would finally get to you to tell you they didn't like you. I mean, it was very difficult to actually do that bullying virtually. Whereas now it's in their pocket, it's in their bedroom 24/7, and
Yeah.
that's difficult. So for me, I'd get home, I'd, you know, disappear into the woods with a friend for a weekend. We'd make a den. I was 15 and playing with Lego and Action Man. I didn't care because I knew no different. It was just constantly playing all the way through.
But you obviously didn't have, I mean, did you have examples did you ever think this is what I'd like to do with my life at that age?
It wasn't. I don't think it was ever an option.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this today. I think part of the reason why is my mum and my dad are very, very creative. And actually, my mum is a very good draftsman, and my dad is a really excellent painter. And yet, they weren't given, or opportunities weren't available to them like that. And so, seeing them with such talent maybe made me, I think perhaps made me realise that it probably wasn't an option. I don't know. I think it also, I remember going through, do you remember those career things?
Oh, yeah.
And like it came out because I was in the Scouts, so I quite liked that organisation, the Scouts. They came out and said that maybe I should be in the army, but like, you know, what would I have done? Paint the tanks? Like what? I don't know what would I do in the army? And it just, to me, it just didn't fit. So there was never. It was always square peg round hole, I think. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it just didn't really work. But things I wanted to do, I went through all of them. I wanted to be a vet. I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to do all these things. But you know, to be honest, I was probably a little bit lazy as well. In fact, I was lazy, and I just liked playing and not really doing a lot of work. So I never did any homework. I never did any revision. I just used to fly by the seat of my pants, really, and try and get away with as little work as possible.
So you do that. I'm assuming GCSEs and A levels weren't yeah. Okay.
I don't mind sharing. At GCSEs, I remember my revision being lying on the garden on this big sponge that we had with a textbook over my face, asleep. That was my revision. And I remember
Right.
when my mum would come back from the shops, I'd quickly go, "Oh yeah, I'm just doing my maths revision." And also, those people of the same age uh, will remember BBC Bite Size came out around that time, and
Yeah.
you had to record it in the middle of the night, which all that
Yeah.
meant.
What was on at that time? It was so bizarre.
There was only 4 channels, wasn't there? But the thing was, it was really funny because it meant you had the excuse to stay up and watch films because it came on at 2 in the morning. So it's like it was the best excuse to stay up and watch films. Um,
Yeah. Claiming that, do you remember the setting your VHS recorder and you claim, oh, I can't trust that it will work,
yeah,
so
you can't trust it.
I'll
Yeah,
stay up and I'll just press record, then I'll go to bed.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it was like I got a couple of A's, B's, C's, D's, you know, all the kind of just all of the grades right the way through. But
Oh, sorry.
my main exams, my main grades were in art and design. That's what I got my best grades in. So it's
Right.
sort of like was leading towards that. But the school would never give you the opportunity to just do that. You had to do
Yeah.
academia.
Yeah.
Um, and so in A
So then
level,
you leave school. Sorry, go on. So then
I,
at A level.
A levels, I did art and design and had to do another subject. So chose physics with full intention of failing it and dropping out after the first year. So did everything I could to make that happen. And then, sure enough, they told me I shouldn't be doing that subject. So I just left with a art and design and a general studies, and just didn't really care. And I got like two D's and an E, and yeah, that was it. So left school totally not interested in education or thinking I was any good at it, to be honest.
It sounds like you knew even as a teenager that this wasn't the right environment for you. This
Yeah.
sounds like you and if some comes across like you kind of had a bit of anger against, that you're not accommodating the skills and the talent that I have.
Yeah, and
Would you say that's
I
correct?
avoided lessons. I used to, because I didn't misbehave, but I didn't do my work. But you can
Mm.
not do your work and get away with that in the 90s because no one really cares about the quiet kid. They care about the kid who's making the noise and being aggressive and doing all the things like that. So I used to volunteer to like audit the library or clear out an art cupboard or set up a stage for a performance. So I find myself probably out of the classroom, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 weeks of the year. I loved it. Going and doing tasks and doing things with adults where I was actually doing useful, that was where I was happy.
I'm nodding because I was exactly the same. I was exactly the same. I would like come up with things that needed to be organized or, catalogued or whatever. So you then leave, you finish school. I'm
Yeah.
assuming that last day of school was a real celebratory kind of moment for you.
Yeah, it was weird because I did my art and my art and design exams. I don't think they still are as well. The very first exams that happen at A level. So they happen early May. My birthday was early May, and so it was literally like I did the first two exams, and then that was it. So I was done. General studies was the third exam. So by 3 days into the exam season, I'd finished. And so I made the decision, or I'd made the decision a few months before that I was going to go traveling. And rather than wait until you're meant to put all your artwork up on the wall, you're meant to have that big kind of like school leaving thing at A level and go on a prom and everything, I left the country and went traveling in South Africa. And kind of, I don't
And
regret
why South
that.
Africa?
My uncle was emigrating there. He'd met a South African when he was traveling and he was taking a container over there. And he just said, would I help him unload it? And I was like, yeah, cool, I'll go to South Africa on my own at 18. And so I went and stayed with them for a few months and worked, and then got to travel all the way through South Africa to Cape Town as an 18-year-old on my own.
Amazing. So first time out of like the institution, out of the rules of where you have to be at this time and so on. What was that like?
It was really great. I think I probably grew up unbelievably in that time. I think I'd always been sort of like a bit of an older person in a young person's body. And then suddenly I was hanging out with, people who'd finished their degrees, they were 21, 22, and they were traveling. And I fit in with them. We got on, and I found that I had these friendships that formed while traveling. And you had to form friendships, but also you could because people were lovely. They were all had a much more open view. Growing up in a sleepy town in Suffolk, you didn't have that. So it just literally blew my mind. The experiences were like breathtaking and stupid as well, like really ridiculous, like risky things I did as an 18-year-old. But at the same time, I'm so glad I've done them. And they inform probably things I still do to this day. Um, but yeah, that risk taking side of me probably was evident at that time, I think.
Yeah.
And
And
like,
so you obviously took risks, realized that you're okay, and
yeah,
that's the lesson that has sort of served you going forward, you think?
Yeah, I think that's probably actually really, yeah, I've never thought about it. I think you're right. I mean, like, so I swam across rivers with, like, that I found out afterwards were infested with sharks. And, you know, like they didn't attack me. And everyone at the time, when we got out of the side, said, how did you get across? I just swam across. I went back 4 times to help other people. And they said, oh, the only reason you didn't get bitten was because of your pommy legs. And then after, there's loads of little things like that that happened, you know, that they say Africa's an amazing continent, and it really is, like, just unbelievable. And actually, yeah, some of the things that I did and saw and survived or whatever, I think probably, yes, having those risks, and now as an adult realizing, do you know what, things might be scary, but you're probably going to survive, is
Yeah.
not a bad way to look at most things.
But to have that experience in such a at such a formative time is so brilliant, because probably any older, and you know, life takes on responsibilities, and you start, you know, hesitating over taking risks. So
Yeah.
to have had that experience is amazing. And did you ever think, you know, was it ever a question to return to the UK, or did you always know you were going to after?
I very nearly at one point thought, could I just not come back? But realised it probably wasn't. And then I came back to England and really thought, you know what, I think I'm probably just going to save up and go back again. But really, in a way, it did its time. It was a moment, and I probably won't ever go back, because it was a time in my life, and it was a time that South Africa was like. And then obviously, then when I came back, life just took a different turn.
Yeah, so what happened next?
Went to college and met my now wonderful
Mrs. G.
wife, Mrs. G. Yeah, met her. I was 18. She was 19, I think, and we kind of like, we fell in love, and that was it, really. I mean, we were very lucky. We met each other young. I know you met your husband young as well, and we're, a lot of people ask, you know, how does it work? We're just best mates, you know.
Yeah.
We're buddies. As if I was going to moan about my wife to anyone, I'd moan to Mrs. G. Like, so.
That's terrific. So you're in college, and then what are you studying there in college?
I had a few missed hits. I did a foundation course and didn't really kind of like, I was more interested, I was really driven by the worry of money, I think, and like trying to get security in life. Because, yeah, I had this freedom to do whatever I want in life, but then actually, are you ready for the real world? Because suddenly you've got to pay bills. We've got a house, we were getting married. So we had a few failed attempts at things. I had a failed attempt at training to be a teacher, ironically. And then just went into working and sort of had jobs and just had that kind of normal life that,
Yeah.
here is just a normal thing. You know, you get a house, you get married, you have a normal life. And that's what we did for 4 years.
And then what changed to make you say, I've kind of had enough of normal, thanks?
I mean, I've never really kind of made a big thing of it, but I've always struggled with mental health, and probably never really admitted it until about that age of around about 23, and suddenly realised that actually probably I'd been quite depressed throughout other parts of my life. And there's a lot of soul searching you have to kind of go through at that stage, a lot of sort of, you know, questions. And actually one of them was, we were sat next to, I remember it as if it was yesterday, we sat next to a duck pond in Writtle, and I'd been going on a day release. I wasn't in prison. I'd been going on a day to college to train once a week to go to do horticulture, and I was working in a nursery growing plants, and I actually really loved going to college and learning and doing the science, and I found it very easy. And I suddenly thought, oh, well, it's not really difficult to do exams. I'm getting really good grades, and it's easy, and it's because I wanted to do it and I loved it.
Yeah, you were applying yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And I sat there next to this pond, and we were eating, like, I think we were eating a French stick with some butter. I think I might have even been spreading it with a credit card. There's a metaphor there. But I was sitting there and I said, oh, do you know what? I'm just not happy with, I'm not fulfilled with what I'm doing. I was happy. We were married. It was like I'm married to my best friend. We have an awesome life in that sense. And then Mr. G said, like, well, what would make you happy, do you think, if you had to do it every day of your life? If you got up every morning, what would make you happy? I was like, well, I love art. I love being, and I thought art was painting. I love art. I love painting. I love drawing. And then I said, what about you? And she said, oh, I'd like to do something within, writing and bits and bobs. And then I said, yeah, well, all of our friends were just finishing uni. That was the thing. They were all just finishing uni and we were in this life that we were in. And then she said, well, why don't we do it? And I remember that feeling of like, and like that real like excitement, like massive rush. And it's like, do you reckon we can? And then we applied and went to some interviews and, we were mature students, which I found insulting until they said we got more money. And then that was it. We packed up our life, gave up our jobs, our kind of starting of our careers, and just left and went to uni in Preston in Lancashire.
That's so inspiring that you could have been following this, route that's sort of prescripted for us in a lot of ways. As you say, society kind of is forming you into that person. But the fact that together you had the confidence together to do that, to go, no, before we head down, many people head down that path for another 20 years before they have the kind of crisis. So this is amazing. So you then go off to uni, you're mature students. Yeah, it is brave. Yeah. And then was it everything that you hoped it to be? Was it the enlightening, exciting, inspiring?
More than. We'd been married for 2 years and we went to uni and we were in halls of residence. We wanted to do the whole thing. And we went
lovely. Sarah's just said my heart is singing right now, and I completely agree. That's such a lovely thing that you wanted to have the experience.
Yeah, and we went to halls of residence, and which was more expensive. We didn't want to go into a house. We wanted to go into halls of residence, and we wanted the full experience. And I remember we went into this thing. We ended up with rooms in a private halls of residence in the same block, but we had to have separate rooms, so there was no provision for married couples because it wasn't like the done thing. So we had separate rooms, and then I remember after about 3 or 4 weeks, one of the people in the halls with us looked at my hand and went, "Oh, you're married," because by then they realised that me and
Mrs. G were together. Yeah,
we're like together, but like they didn't quite know because we're not like, we don't shove it in your face coupley because all of our friends weren't in couples, so we've kind of like part of the group. And then so this person said, oh, you're married, and they're like, oh, you're married, and then we both went like, yes, we're married. And then it was fine. We didn't want to be like seen as the married couple because there's that kind of stigma attached to it. And by this time we'd got all of our mates at uni, they thought it was hilarious, and then we were like, because we were then like mum and dad of the group, I suppose, we were like where the party would start. So we would have the house parties at the start, and we'd do the food, and then I think we partied harder than some of the 18-year-olds because we'd been working for 4 years. So what was it to go out and get absolutely ratted and then get up at 10 o'clock for a lecture? It was nothing. We've been getting up at 6 and going to work. This was fun. So
yeah, but also I think, they make this comment about education is wasted on the young, and you guys had you had stepped out of your life and you actively chose this. So it makes complete sense to me that you were probably partying hard, working hard. You wanted the whole 110% of the experience.
Yeah, and I was really driven to succeed in getting the degree, but also to get a really good degree because I had that kind of, like you said before, that little bit of anger about being cast off by I was asked at one point at high school, at sixth form, whether I could leave because my grades wouldn't be good enough. So like I had this real like burning drive to prove myself right. Mm-hmm. So I remember one time going out getting quite drunk at a schoolies disco, and there was people used to go around with marker pens writing on people, didn't they? And so I went into my group crit, and if you've been in art school, it's where everyone sits around and critiques your work. It's quite brutal, and I sat there all laughing, and the tutor was just smiling away. We went for a coffee, and then I said, "Why is everyone laughing?" And he said, "Because you've got something rude written on your face." And I hadn't realised that I'd actually got this faint mark of something written on my head, which I won't say out loud. So it was just, yeah, it was a party time, and it was hard work, and just in such a good way. So I treated it like a job, but a job where I was the boss.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also we're quite, I think me and Mrs. G are quite competitive, so we both, and she actually didn't do a foundation year, so she was always a year ahead of me at uni. So when she got her classification, it was like, oh, okay, I need to kind of make sure I step up. And she wouldn't say
So
that.
she set a standard, yeah,
Yeah.
that you wanted to meet her at speed.
Better pull my finger out and do some work. So yeah, it was really good. And then we got our degrees, and we were sort of like very comfortable. We were going to stay in the Northwest. We settled there, and I got funded to do a master's as well. So if you did well at the degree, you got a funded master's. So I got to do that as well. And then we were sort of very happy, and I was working in the Northwest, and it was all going fantastic.
Until.
Yes. So yeah, it's a hard one. I've written some of this down and sent it to Alice, and
this is a pretty extraordinary turn of events. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were living in this lovely flat in an old Georgian building in Preston, and we'd paid the rent on it, and we'd gone through all the rigmarole to get a flat. You know, they go through everything about your life to get deposits and everything. And then, unbeknownst to us, on my 29th birthday, there was someone started picking the lock, a locksmith, and opened the door. And Mrs. G was like, "Hello, I'm here." And the person was like, "Oh, we're changing the locks because the house has been repossessed." They were like, "No, I live here." And it turned out,
I pay my rent. Yeah.
it turned out that the owner of the property had pocketed the rent and hadn't paid the mortgage on, I think it was 9 properties. Now, in hindsight, poor bloke had like lost everything himself. But at the time, I was like, pretty angry. And the repossession had happened, and he'd said it had been vacant, so it just happened. And then we were given a kind of like, not an eviction, but like, kind of like, you need to be out. And we probably could have fought a little harder, but I don't know. It just didn't.
I'm sure shock is a big part of it.
Yeah. So we got a transit van, a Luton van. We filled up the Luton van with our stuff, and we came back to Suffolk, and that was it. We literally had to get out. I mean, it took us probably 6 weeks, and yeah, it was completely like heartbreaking. And obviously, having had ups and downs mental health wise, it probably knocked me more than I thought at the time. You're getting to 30. 30 is a big number when you're 30, and you're back living at your parents' sofa surfing, and you've lost everything. And not to mention just losing the job, losing the career, and actually going backwards financially and being in pretty bad financial situation, virtually kind of bankrupt, because of someone else.
Yeah. Through no fault of your own, yeah.
And can I just say at this point, if anyone's like gone through similar things or going through it, I wouldn't change it for the world.
Why?
You're only given in world what you can take. You can only given what you can actually deal with, really. You might not be able to deal with it now, but you will be able to deal with it one day. And it will make you so grateful. I'm not going to say strong, it's grateful. Gratitude for what you have. And that's it. And so, yeah, we're back in Suffolk. I hated it. I did not want to be here. Everyone who's in Suffolk and this area will laugh. I literally was like, this place, But
that's because hometowns are kind of made for leaving, aren't they? Originally you have to leave them.
Yeah.
And so the idea of not going back by choice to begin with, you were on a trajectory.
Yeah.
So you were all determined. You're in Suffolk, trying to start again, the two of you, scratching bits together. And you're obviously determined to sort of get back out and I guess resume with the original plan.
Yeah, definitely.
But then...
I was going to go back to Lancashire, and I was ready. I'd got a business where I I was hanging shows for artists, going around delivering them around Europe. From Liverpool, I was working with an artist called Labaina Hamid, who went on to win the Turner Prize, and I was her assistant. And all of that kind of went overnight. And yeah, but then I kind of wonder whether this is the thing, I wonder whether it needed to go for me to actually then start doing, because I might just ended up just being an assistant for someone forever, or just working in galleries.
Yeah.
So then, like, we're here and doing bits and bobs, and then I sort of looked around and went, oh, do you know what? I quite like going to the beach. I quite like going for walks and going to cafes, and quite like this life. And then I actually started falling in love with being in Suffolk, and I realised it had more cultural offering than it had before. There was more art on display, there more on offer. There was better links to other places. You know, I found Norwich and like all these things, and then suddenly I was like, do you know what? I actually quite like it here.
So then you decide to lay roots and stop looking to get out.
Yeah, exactly.
You embrace it.
Yeah, and started sort of saving for potentially one day we might be able to buy a house, all that kind of thing that you do. Probably everything that people do at sort of 23, and we're 30. And yeah, and then sort of wanted to have a job where I could be an artist, because I wanted to make. I suddenly realised I wasn't doing what I trained to do. I wasn't doing what made me happy. I was paying the bills. We were paying the bills. That's all we were doing. So then I sort of went for a job as a part-time art technician in a school, thinking, oh, that'd be great. I can be an artist and an art technician. And some people juggle that really well. I'm a bit of an all-in kind of person.
I think that we all know that. I think we can tell how you run the makers market already. Yeah.
Yeah, we ended up just sort of, I ended up going for that job, and then that snowballed into getting to write a photography course, and then run a photography course. And then I ended up being a teacher, unqualified teacher. And then I ended up running the Create department after 5 years of working there. And it was a bit of I don't quite know how it happened.
And how was that I mean, if we sort of bring this back to somewhat a bit of a circle going here, that last time you were in Suffolk, you were feeling somewhat suffocated, that there was no space for you. Yeah. There was no creative space for you. And now here you are in a teacher role, making that space for kids that are like you, I imagine, you know, giving them resources to explore a medium of art. How did that feel?
I was a nightmare, because I basically we got results. We got 95% pass rate in a school where the pass rate was 40%. And the reason why is because I never, ever, ever doubted the ability of any child, ever. Like, no matter what, you come in my classroom kicking and screaming and tearing things apart, I'm going to sit there quietly until you stop, and then we're going to get on with work. I'm going to give you time and time again, I'm going to give you a chance. Every time I'm going to give you another chance. And because of that, we got good results. And because of that, the management couldn't really question what we were doing, because we were doing what all education should do, which is provide for every single person, no matter what. And that's very fortunate when you're in a creative subject, because you can't always do that in subjects like English and maths and science. So we're very lucky. And I'd say that to people who would come over and say, well, how do you do it? I'm a science teacher, I can't do it. I said, well, you teach science. You know, like, unless you're going to teach it in a way that's blowing things up, you're not going to get them. And I just had a ball, and I followed the rules, because I am a bit of a stickler for the rules, but I followed the rules and do my own thing as well. Like, I would do all of the paperwork and like completely work until whatever time, and then do my extra bit on top, because that was the difference. And actually, you can only do that for so long. It's firefighting. It's not anything more than just constantly firefighting. And actually, you can only do firefighting for so long.
And how was it being on the other side? So there you had been as a student, feeling
Yeah.
like, you know, the teachers can't see you. And now you're on the other side and seeing how maybe, you know, the system, you know, hems you in, or I don't know. What was it like seeing it from that point of view?
I really couldn't. I didn't like it. I used to just have my sanctuary, and I had to just have my own domain that I could control, in that creative way, not control as I am,
Mm.
but like, I was a pretty strict teacher. Like you wouldn't cross me because I was strict. But I always think I was told this by my parents that if you set boundaries for children, they love it because
Yeah,
they don't want the freedom. They want you to help them and they want you to tell them what to do, and then they'll do it, and then you've got to praise them. And that's what I do. I created this little environment, and as a creative department, we were fun, and we were the ones who were kind of having a laugh and getting away with it. And yeah, and that was it. I remember there was one lad who was failing at everything, and I remember going to parents' evening, and his father was absolutely scary as anything. He was like 6 foot 100, and his mum was like young and pretty, and then he was this young lad. And I remember looking in the situation, the first parents' evening ever, and thinking, don't look at the mum because the dad will get angry. Don't look at the dad because he'll think you're weird. Don't look at the son. And I sat there going, my first ever parents' evening. And then the dad goes, so how's he getting on then? I was like, he's amazing. He's amazing. And it was like, I'd only been doing it for about 3 weeks. Anyway, so I said he was amazing. And then the next day at school, the lad came and he said, why did you say I was amazing? I haven't done any work. Or he had, but he hadn't done any work in his book. Typical, like, teenage boy. And I said, because you are amazing, you're just not doing any work. It doesn't mean you're not amazing, you're just not doing any work. And then he ended up getting an A star. So like,
oh,
and like that to me, like it's like cliche, it's like a film, all the rest of it, yeah. But it's so true. Someone
yeah,
believed in him and he believed in himself. But that's
yeah.
all they need, that's all anyone needs is someone to say, do you know what? I believe in what you do. And that's what I was able
I
to do.
see you. Also, I think that's very important that people feel
Yeah,
seen,
yeah,
that
definitely.
kids feel like, I see you. You can put up all the noise, but I see you.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so you're there, you are working your ass off, excuse my
yeah,
language,
yeah.
as a teacher, going above and beyond. And obviously that comes that, you know, there's a limit to that.
Yeah. It basically, I had burnout. I think I was at the point of I think I was at the point of a breakdown. Um, Alongside that, I had sort of health issues, which were I had problems with the veins in my legs, and so I had like ulcers and all sorts, and that happened for like 3 years, I think it was. I can't remember, and I was in pain all the time. So like that happened at the same time, and then I had to go off and have surgery to get it kind of like fixed. They hoped, and it worked. So I'm going from like daily pain, and it's been part of your normal life, and then suddenly the surgery worked, and I didn't have pain anymore.
Amazing.
And or like basically they were saying it's worked, you won't have pain, and it was sort of already I could tell the difference, and then. And I think I was right at the point of the breakdown, if I'm completely honest. I think a lot of teachers are. And it isn't going above and beyond, it's doing your job. And there's some people out there who don't realise the job is 70 hours a week. But it's basically
Mm.
doing your job. Like everyone does their job. It just, I probably wasn't built for it. And then I went back to my back to work meeting. And my friend was the HR manager. And she said to me, what can we do to help you, you know, return to work? And I handed in my resignation. Just said, that's it. I'm done. I'm out.
And what was your plan? What were you thinking was going to be next?
I wasn't going to do what I was doing was the first plan. That was the most
Right.
important thing. And I think that's the thing. Sometimes you can overplan what you're going to do, and actually what you got to concentrate on what you don't want to do. I think as
Yeah.
much, because that actually can also be eating away at you from the other side. So it's not just what you want to do, it's what you don't want to do. That's a really key message to get out there. So I started making lino prints in a kind of in the summer holidays, again at a point of like quite a low, and they'd given me a massive boost. And I'd been doing photography and stuff on the side as well. And then I sold like 5 of them, and I thought, oh, so I sort of had this harebrained idea that if I put,
Wait, so before we skip over this, like, so
yeah,
you're there, you are in the summer holidays, and from what
yeah,
I understand, it's Mrs. G who's got you a lino print
yeah,
kit,
yeah,
right? And she encourages you, have a go at this, just get
yeah,
back to having a play, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, and then, well, how does it get into you selling?
I literally,
You make a couple.
yeah, I made one of the Southwold Lighthouse, which I still have for sale. I've sold one today actually online, which is really lovely. And I I did some prints, and then I just put it out there. And I've always put out on social media content, but it was always photographs or something. And I put out the lino print and just said, "Oh, I just did this today." And in that first like few days, I sold 5 of them, and I thought, "Oh, that's strange." And I put a price on it. This is the key. I put a price on it. I put a value on it. So it's all right
Yeah.
sharing something, but putting a value on it means that someone knows if they can afford it, but it also means they know it's for sale. So I put a price on it, and I sold
That's a
5.
very good point.
Like so. And then suddenly I was like, oh, that it kind of gave me that almost. I said this to someone the other day. It gave me that little speck of light at the end of the tunnel, and that speck of light was slowly moving closer towards me. It wasn't getting smaller. I could see it. I was like, that's the tunnel I'm going down. I'm going to get to that. So when I gave my notice in, I basically had a plan to spend all my time making lino prints, selling them at markets, doing the photography that I've been doing for magazines as well. And if I needed to, I would do supply teaching. And that was three and a half years ago, I think.
Wow.
And I haven't done any supply teaching.
Hey,
So yeah,
that's terrific.
yeah, it's amazing, and I like that. And I didn't have a big plan. And I've always said this, like so many people have said, when's the right time? How do you do it? When should I? Like, first of all, don't do anything that's going to cripple you financially, because that'll cause you more mental strife ultimately. But if you've saved some money, you've got some good support behind you. You've got someone who can say, well, don't worry, I'll take the slack up for 6 months or a year or whatever. Just try and earn a bit. Then do it whenever you can. Don't wait for the right moment, because the right moment might never happen. It really is like a case of just kind of jumping off the cliff.
And so you did it. You jumped off the cliff, and obviously you've made it work for the last 3.5 years.
Yes.
And I'm assuming, so you have your website and you're doing markets.
Yeah.
And obviously, as you say, you've got the photography on the side, and you were also doing some radio work.
Yeah, so that came about. So we just managed to. So when I've got a very brilliant wife. When I quit from my stable teaching job, it was the year of the Brexit. We'd just bought our first house, and I quit teaching. So literally, like not the sensible time to do it, but like I say, when is it? When is the right time? So yeah, so I left there, and to be honest, although I was quite good at getting up in front of children, I've always actually been quite nervous around speaking. So I was sort of still, I mean, I would always be seen to be the person who would not be nervous, but that's because I'd be the person who'd do it first. So I used to have, I don't want to say a phobia because that belittles phobias. I had a fear of my voice being recorded on devices and having to hear it. And so I would, if someone walked in a room with a video camera, call us dating it, or anything recording, I would literally mute. I would not say a word. I would hum. Didn't want it. And then we bought this place that we're in now, and saved up for it, and managed to get a house, first house, brilliant. We're doing it up, and then we started videoing it, and I started doing a silly thing of like, hello viewers, knowing that it would be me and Mrs. G that would watch it back. Hello viewers, how are you? And then we watched them back, and I sort of thought, you know what? It's not actually as bad as I thought it would be, because it was just us watching it. And then there was an opportunity came up to go on the radio and talk about my print work. And that risk thing, I just thought, nah, go on then, I'll do it. I just went for it. I didn't want to do it. This is the thing. I didn't want to, but I knew I needed to, and I knew I would feel great afterwards. So I went on
Yeah.
the radio and did this thing on Suffolk Radio with Leslie Dolphin called The Sofa, my sofa guest, and I just loved it, like a massive bug. And she said to me, "You will have got the bug," and I definitely did. So I went and did some training on radio, did Ofcom training, and then got a once a week breakfast show on ICR FM in Ipswich. Did that up until the start of this year, just for a year, and yeah, it was just great fun, just playing crazy tunes, having to fill for ages, and be in the studio on your own chatting.
It's so, there's so many aspects to your story that's so inspiring. But I think the fact that, I mean, what comes across to me is that you guys together, you and Mrs. G, are such a team,
Yeah,
and which is wonderful in itself. But also that your experiences over life have taught you, and you do it, that you push yourself into spaces that you know, maybe fear or feel uncomfortable about, and you conquer them, and you reap the benefits of that. And I just think that's incredibly inspiring.
thank you. I mean,
Um,
that's sort of hopefully why I wanted to do this, because I've not really been had the spotlight put on me, and it's easy to sit on the other side, and easier to sit on the other side and question, for me anyway. But if one person takes from this that actually, you know, just like you said, Alice, believe in yourself, find someone who believes in you, and like put yourself in those positions that will one day seem like the most comfortable place to be. That you're, like like you said, things you're scared of that actually will become very, very normal.
yeah. And but you're there, you're doing your line of prints. You've got all the fingers in all the creative
Yeah,
pies, and you're making it all work for you. Then
yeah,
lockdown happens,
yeah,
and you realise, oh God, there's no markets, there's no income. And obviously you're part of a local community, I take it, where you kind of know, well, there's lots of us who are going to really miss out on our incomes.
yeah. I mean, I
And
used to
so,
run used to run a physical market, so I got rid of that last year. Sold that to a fellow maker, and so I kind of knew that there was what it was. They'd lost their income selling, and their markets had gone, and they had to deal with all of that. So I didn't think they were in the headspace to be able to provide anything to fill in. And then I was stood in my front room. No, I was stood in the kitchen, walked into the front room, and looked down the garden, and looked at my market stall, leaned up against the thing, looking all forlorn. And I've always been a little bit like I dig my heels in. I'll dig my heels in and not, you know, I'll follow the rules, but I'll question. I'll ask questions. So I dug my heels in and went, do you know what? I'm going to put my stall up in my garden. No one's going to come to it. I'm going to share it on Instagram, and I don't care. And no virus. It's not about. I followed the rules absolutely, and I completely applaud everyone for doing that. But it was about me defying the virus from my home, and like
well, it
saying,
sounds like what you've done in all of your life is you have rebelled and railed and rallied against the limitations that someone else, some authoritarian has established for you.
yeah, I think
And
you
that's kind of what you did with this.
probably hit the nail on the head there. And so I thought I don't think things through when I come up with ideas. I tend to run with them and then see where they go. So I just got straight on the phone to a friend and said, "What do you think?" And then they said, "It's crazy. It's absolutely bonkers. Yes, I'll do it." And then I phoned three other people, and the reaction was the same from all of them. And then I phoned the markets that I knew and just said, "I'm doing this. Like, this is going to be so that when you come out of this, I can share your story as well." And they were like, "Right, okay, but I don't think I can really get involved." I was like, "That's fine," but I didn't want them to feel like I was jumping on their fate,
Yeah,
their the victims they were. Um,
yeah.
and so then I just started it, and I remember there's a video early on of me saying 20 people are going to be involved. It's amazing, and then suddenly it went, and there was sort of 100 makers from like Australia, Canada, America, and it just suddenly it was such a warm hug. That's what it was.
Yeah. And has it, I mean, now when you look at what the community is, the size of the account, and, you know, the midday makers, and the, you know, all these lovely people in here, and all the hearts going up. I mean, if you'd have gone back to that first time you were looking at your stand, standing forlornly against the wall, would you have imagined this?
I wouldn't have done it because
You wouldn't have done it.
I would have been scared.
Right.
So you wouldn't.
So yeah.
I wouldn't have done it because I would have been scared. So if anyone can take anything, don't think about it, just do it. Because I can tell you now, if you think about it, you'll convince yourself not to do it. And so
Yeah, it's very true.
if I think about it too much, I still get scared. I still get a bit like, oh, but like, do you know what? What's the worst that can happen? And that's exactly what you have to feel like. I noticed that Ian has just come in, is in here. Ian Kura Woodworks, had a chat with him a few weeks ago, and he was, the same. He didn't want to do, didn't not want to do it. He was like, I'm just really nervous. And he nailed it and smashed it. When I spoke to him afterwards, it felt sky high. And do you know what? Because he did what he didn't want to do, and he took that risk, and it paid off.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the more we get used to that heart pumping adrenaline, that thing of your body saying, oh, fight or flight, or, most of us, I think, are thinking run, run, run. The more you can push through that and find a comfort in that, you start feeling invincible, don't you?
You do, and you've got to be careful because the bubble bursts every now and then. It does for me.
Of course, yeah.
But also know your own character and know your own limitations. So if this isn't you and you can't do it, don't sit there feeling bad. Then do what you can do. Push yourself to the limits of what you can do. And even if that's just sharing a picture of you on a post, you know what? For some people, that's massive. It would have been for me before. As a teacher, I didn't share a picture of myself on social media for 5 years. So, like, it's a big change. So one of the things that people said recently to me, and I didn't recognise this as a trait, that in stressful situations, I'm unflappable. Now that might be the case. I think I'm more driven to action, and the flap comes out in an action. So that's what I do. But if you're someone who needs time to sit and be frozen and just take it in, do it.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So here we are now. We're approaching the 5th Makers Market from Home.
Yes.
There are you and Mrs. G have worked out that you can kind of make a commitment to a certain amount of people that you can keep an eye on their accounts on the day and reshare them, but it's open to all sorts of, there's another hundreds of people who are all taking part in the market because there is no limitation on participation. It's simply whether something gets shared on the main account or not.
Exactly,
and you're you've still been running it as a donation-based market. And that's, I know that the donations that you've received, you've just been putting straight back into the market, making the website and being able to grow it so that you've got somebody else helping with the social media, so you can be sharing 350 people on the day.
Yeah. So we've got Georgia coming on Sunday to help us. I got myself a newer phone so that it works, so I didn't black screen to loads of people.
So you can basically give us all these platforms.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're not making anything off it, and I cannot imagine the amount of time that you must have put into it. Now I know that you're loving it and you're enjoying it, but it also must be exhausting. Do you have a rough idea of how much of your working week goes into the market and the midday makers and the inspiration interviews?
I'd say I reckon a couple of days a week. But bear in mind, I like most creative, lost every bit of income. So my theory was, I've got nothing better to do. And at the moment, yes, I have, and I'm trying to juggle all those things at the moment. But going forwards, the donation thing was really key, and I'd like to keep it going as long as we can on that basis, because it doesn't put a barrier for anyone. But yeah, there will be a point where, for example, Alice, Lydia, we've got Georgia, we've got Mrs. G, they're all putting work in, and it would be lovely to be in a position where we can grow that as a community for everybody. But ultimately, I'm probably a bit silly. I don't really think about money at the front of any decision. And I know that's really daft. But
it's not daft, it's a generous thing, but I think it is worth, mentioning that you're doing a lot of stuff for all of us. We're all benefiting, and you're very kindly just asking, and you even word it that, you know, just donations if you have a good, you know, sales day. There's not even a set amount that you recommend. I mean, I would hope that I'm assuming lots of people, you know, buy
Yeah,
you a coffee
the
by the
support.
donation button.
Yeah, the support has been unbelievable. Both, I mean, some people also got in touch and said, "Look, I can't pay my mortgage," and it's like, well, this is for you. This market's for you, um,
Yeah,
because then they sold hundreds of pounds worth of stuff. Um, we've all got our little part to play, and this has just been something that I think when I'm an old man, I'll look back on it with the most fondness. I just can't. I just can't say how much all of the makers and the shoppers and browsers have given to me. You know, to believe in this, to be seen, to be believed, like you said, is such a powerful thing that you've given me, and to be have that opportunity to make a small difference in a particularly dark time has been pretty life changing for me. I mean, I haven't been depressed the whole of lockdown, and yet in my life I have, and
yeah.
that's because of you guys.
Oh, well, I think that we can say exactly the same back. It's certainly, I'm sure I'm speaking to many people, and I've seen all the hearts and all the comments going throughout all of this. But yeah, it's, I was thinking today, like, what would it have been like for me without the Makers Market? Because it's not just the having a market and, you know, having a date to, oh, I might create that product in time for this, and I get to share what I've made. But it's the community, and yeah, I feel like it's made a lot of us braver about sharing our stories, and I think you've inspired so many of us to push ourselves in whatever way a bit more. So what is the future of the market for you? What do you
Well,
feel?
I think we need to just keep growing the contribution from the makers. The midday makers are proving very successful. We had 10,000 views last month. We want to keep getting inspiring interviews on people who are out there who we want to talk to, who are outside of the making world but in the creative industry. I know Alice and Lydia have got people lined up. Um, and we want to keep doing the markets as long as they're wanted and needed. But we'll be reactive. And I've said this about in business. If you're a small business, think big, but also be agile and change when you need to. So if this weekend, on Sunday, everyone's out and they don't come to the market virtually, we might have to look at how we do things, but that's just what we'll do. The
Yeah,
community's not going anywhere. And that's why we started the Midday Makers, to make sure that even if there isn't a market, there's still going to be a presence and a way for us all to come
yeah,
together and share things.
yeah, it's wonderful. Well, we are dangerously close to the cut-off time. So yeah, less than 30 seconds. So I'm going to
Well,
say thank you so much, Andy. This has been absolutely amazing. And yeah, thumbs up all round. Yeah, it's been an incredible story. Thank you so much for sharing it and for allowing me to help you share it.
thank you so much,
And
Alice. I wouldn't have wanted it to be any other way than you. Thank you.